For many of us, we know what we should do. The problem is we don't do the things we know we're supposed to. Jim Henderson had an experience where he grew up learning about Christ. He kind of not exactly did everything he was supposed to, but had an awakening that brought him back to his Savior. It was a powerful experience, an amazing story, and I know it will inspire you and those you know come unto Christ as well. Hey everyone, welcome to Changing. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, and if this is your first time listening to our podcast, we're super grateful to have you. If you're continuing to listen and you love the show, please go ahead and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. This show is designed to help followers of Jesus Christ, people like you and me, to hear experiences and stories from others who are going along that path. We are all continuing to change. We're all on that path. We're all repenting. We're all trying to be better. How much better would it be to learn from other friends and fellow disciples who are going down this journey as well and going down this path? On today's story, today's podcast episode, you're going to hear the story of Jim Henderson. And Jim is a dear friend of mine, and he's going to talk about his experience, how he grew up in church. He had a great knowledge of the scriptures, had a great knowledge of Jesus Christ. But you know how sometimes we kind of not do those things that we know we're supposed to. Eventually, you hear how Jim was able to have this reawakening, so to speak. And it came thousands and thousands of miles away. It was when he was in the military. And he was pretty much in a foxhole. How this changed him and how this story can help to change you. It's a pleasure to have you. And well, you're one of those individuals that, you know, you get a chance to meet in a professional world and you get a chance to connect in the personal world. And you're like, you know, I'm glad that happened because I've been able to learn a lot from you over the years. And I'm especially excited to connect with you on multiple different levels. One, you're an awesome dude. And then two, you're a believer. And we have so much that we are able to connect with on that level. And this is why I think this episode is going to be great. Jim, I'd love for you to tell our audience a little bit more about you and what you do for a living and a little bit about your life.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to believe you and I have been friends now for almost 5 years, going over 5 years. Doesn't seem possible.
But, I know, crazy, right?
But my name is Jim Henderson. I live in South Florida, along with Donald. Somebody has to live here, so we took one for the team and decided to move here because we know winters are brutal in South Florida. I work for a electronic health record software company in the Fort Lauderdale area, and it affords me a lot of connections with different people, and I get the opportunity. Sometimes it's an opportunity, sometimes it's not, to travel quite extensively. Of course, with the pandemic last year, that came to a halt. But it's starting to ease up and starting to get back out and see different people, different parts of the country, so it's always good to do that. I've been married to my wife for 38 years. Coming up this July, we have two daughters that are 35 and 30, and we have two wonderful grandsons, two little boys. So life has been exceptionally good, and God's been very generous to us.
Oh man, congratulations on that, Jim! An awesome family and wonderful career, and a lot of great things that you're doing. And I'm super excited to be here with you. As you know, with this podcast, Jim, is called Changing. And the idea is, as a disciple of Jesus Christ, every last one of us, we can't just say one day that we're done. Like, we're always changing. Like, every day we advance, we improve, we become better. Sometimes some of us take a couple steps back, but we continue to go forward and, you know, try to improve on that. So the concept behind the show is changing. And we love to hear stories of people of how they have changed or how they continue to change. Now, with your experience, you and I talked about this. You have a rich military background. And I know what I would love for you to do, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit more about your military background and then lead into the experience you had that caused you to have this massive change. And even before that.
I grew up in the church. Yeah. My father was a pastor. I say was. He passed away in April from COVID, but I grew up in the church, the son of a preacher, which automatically makes me the meanest kid in church. My grandfather was a pastor, and my great-grandfather, so I'm the first one to break that, but I was never called to be a pastor, and I don't know that I was really in a position to understand the calling had I even accepted it. But after college, for some reason, I thought it'd be fun to join the Army. I can't imagine what I was thinking at the time. And believe me, I thought about that several times. Like, what were you thinking? But I joined the Army, and the first 6 years, which is the first enlistment, I just hated it because I'm lower enlisted, which means that everything that rolls downhill. Well, guess what? You're at the bottom of that hill, and I began to make rank, and things got a little better. I enjoyed it, and then I was deployed at that time to Desert Shield, and suddenly everything that had been theoretical or just a training scenario was suddenly not training. It was real. And had to leave my wife and our two daughters, which were 5 and 1 at the time. And, when you've got to make a will up when you're in your 20s, that's a real sobering thing to go through. But nonetheless, that was what I said I would do, and that's what I did. And along with me and 600,000 other Americans, we went and put our money where our mouth was. But all during that time, I think as people who grow up in the church, you tend to get comfortable with what you're supposed to say and how you're supposed to act. And I think the greatest distance in the world sometimes is to have that knowledge that's in your head migrate that 18 inches to your heart. Sometimes that 18 inches takes a lifetime to traverse.
Yeah.
So on the night of January 17th, 1991, I'll remember it forever, the rules of engagement for us changed because that was when, and then President Bush decided that he was taking the gloves off, and he'd given Saddam Hussein enough time to do whatever he was going to do, and nobody thought that he was going to leave Kuwait. So being part of a forward deployed outfit, you're in foxholes, fighting positions is what we call them. And I remember that night we had gone outside the wire, outside the perimeter of the fire base, and we were actually in what they call an LPOP, a listening post, observation post. And the main thing for you in that position is you're the tripwire. You see everything first. You hear everything first. So my battle buddy, he's still a brother. We talk every single week. We're still very close. I remember we're sitting there, and we've got our magazines set. We've got our sector sketches done. I mean, we know what our fields of fire are. We know what the combo frequencies are. You do everything that you're trained to do. You've got everything where you need it, so that when things happen, if God forbid they do, training takes over, and you can actually do your job and protect your brothers and your sisters that are behind you. So I remember sitting there thinking, we've got all this done, and I thought, why do I not? I don't feel like I've done everything I need to do. And it suddenly dawned on me that, hey, idiot, you've not prayed. You've not given this over to God. And it's like all a lifetime of Sunday school and of sermons and of youth choir and youth groups came in, and it's like, what you need to do. You just need to acknowledge God, So we had a real serious, brief conversation, God and I did. And it wasn't that I found God, it's just that I finally remembered where I put him. And that he had never gone anywhere. It was me that had sort of allowed other things to come in and clutter up a space that really was his. And after when I finished praying and all, I had a peace that I can say I had never known up until that point. And I'm not talking about emotions and stuff, but I had a confidence that if the sun came up and I was there to see the sun come up, that was going to be great. But if I didn't see the sun come up, that was going to be okay too, because it was handled, it was taken care of. And it dawned on me that perhaps what I had been concentrating on was religion, but what really was the answer was faith. And that's why you very seldom find atheists, like they say, atheists in foxholes, because you don't have room for very much stuff in those little confined spaces, but there's all the room in the world for faith. And that's what you have. Go
back to that. You mentioned that you found, instead of finding religion, you found faith, or something to that nature. The way you said it was great.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that press into people. work, your job, your relationships, what you think you should be doing, what others maybe think you should be doing, and all of this you have an awareness of. But what really is important is the relationship that you have
Mm.
with Christ, and that's the faith where that comes into play. I think sometimes we can be the hardest critic of
Yeah.
each other, of ourselves. And I've heard it said that nobody eats their wounded like Christians do, and I know that can be the case. But in a personal one-on-one relationship, knowing everything that I was ever going to do in my life that was going to be wrong, knowing how much I could mess things up, and knowing how much I would hurt him, he still chose to give his
Mm.
life for me, in full knowledge of all that. And that knowledge and that acceptance of that sacrifice enables you to enter into a faith relationship with Christ, a one-on-one personal relationship where you don't have to wonder about things, you can know. And it was important for me to acknowledge that. And like I said, finally let that knowledge migrate from my head to my heart.
Yeah. No, it's super powerful. You mentioned something. You had this that you didn't necessarily, not that you found God, but you just remembered where he was to, go to him. Because like you said, growing up in the church, Sunday school, all those things, you came back to you.
Yeah.
It was always there. It was like by osmosis. It was already in your head, in your heart. Just bringing that stuff to your heart. I'm curious to find out, what did you say in that conversation with him? You said you had that conversation there, that prayer to God. What did you say? Because I can't.
I don't believe in making deals with God. If you do this, I'll do that.
Hold on,
Or,
let me go cancel my last deal I sent up there
on
to him.
Sunday. On Sunday, well, Lord, if I put $200 in the offering plate, can you make sure I get 400 back? I don't believe in that. And I wanted to be as honest as I could be, and I just flat out said, Lord, I've known you my whole life. I know what to say, but let me tell you how I'm feeling. And for the first time in my life, I want you to just take over. And it's sort of like when you're a kid playing in the playground. The little merry-go-round thing where you spin, you get thrown off. And the place that is the safest for you on that merry-go-round is right in the center. But the further you go from the center, the easier it is to be thrown off because you're not where you need to be. And in all the time you're on the merry-go-round, that center never changes. It stays at the same place every time. And I think people as believers or as Christians, sometimes we allow ourselves to be drawn to the periphery, to the boundaries, to the edges where we're not safe. If you've ever seen a bait ball here in South Florida, where the bait fish are out swimming, the safest place you can be if you're one of those fish is in the middle of that ball. The most dangerous place you can be is by yourself out swimming, because that's where the sharks are. And for me, it was a conversation with the Lord that looked, not perfect, but it's not a revelation to you. But here I am, and I don't know what the future holds. I didn't then, and I still don't now. But in the event that my future is measured in hours instead of years, please, help me to do my job, to not let my brothers down, and to do what I said I would do, but more importantly, to live whatever I have left for you. And that is still the same prayer I think I should have today as I did 30 years ago.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, because I think if you're living every single moment like the way that you're supposed to, then it doesn't become this fearful thing of death, because it's a natural part of that journey. However, but committing yourself to saying, almost like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, I have faith, but if not, I'm still good, because I know I'm good with him above. And that, I think there's each day, if we were to that level of commitment, how do we continue to maintain that level of commitment though each day? You found that in that Foxhole, or re-engage that point. How do we make that happen on a daily basis? It's
a daily realization of who you are and what your goals are for that day, and what got you to this point. I think in order to be the kind of person that God wants you to be, you always have to be mindful of who you are and your dependence upon God, and that nobody loves you more than Him. And as a father in my young 20s, I learned more about what unconditional love was when I became a father. And through that, it translated to me, because the Bible says, well, if you can love these things in this manner, how much more would God love you? And I think there's a love that we can't even begin to understand. And I think that through time, we try to place limits on it. We try to put man-made descriptions or boundaries, but at the end, we can't comprehend it, Donald. It doesn't. It's not. We're not able to make that connection. But the love that we have, that God has for us, I think if we're mindful of how we got there, of our dependence upon Him, and the sincere desire to be humble in everything that we do, and sincere and honest, and just reflect the love of God the Father through us, I think that may not be the answer, but I don't know that that's not a good place to start.
Oh, no, I think that's a great answer there, and I agree with you. It's an awesome place to start. It's more of like, in the way I see it too. It's like you mentioned the idea of daily, like work, and I think that's just what it comes down to. It's just daily improvement.
It's an effort.
And I'm making that commitment. I just think like I make a commitment daily to eat, or I make a commitment to work out. How much commitment am I making today to renew that covenant or that promise with God that I'm gonna be His disciple or live according to what He wants? You know what I mean? So I think just being cognizant of that. So it's so easy to be like church Sunday, but then during the week, it can get waned from it. But just making sure you keep that Sunday vibe going throughout the whole week.
Well, absolutely. And there are things that in your life that can either help you stay where you need to be spiritually, or they can help lead you away from where you should not be spiritually. And you just have to take it a day at a time, and not live your day regretting yesterday, but at the same time not wasting your day by thinking of tomorrow. You've got today. You're here. Let's make this effort count. And how do you do that? How to make yourself cognizant of other people that you come in contact with, and how you treat them, and how you're observed by them, and all of those things add together. I think of my grandfather, who died when he was 97, and I am sure at some point in time I heard he's been angry or said something ill about somebody, but I can tell you I never heard that, ever. The only thing that my only criticism of him is, and I have several of his Bibles, and as I mentioned, he was a pastor, but I thought, man, I'd inherited the motherlode when I got all his Bibles. I can't read his notes. He writes worse than a doctor did. So I don't know. Maybe I've got a recipe to chocolate chip cookies thrown in there around John 3:16, but I never saw him ever, angry and talking bad about somebody, ever.
Yeah.
And I'd love, if I could emulate that, then that's golden, and that's my goal.
Oh, so good, man. Jim, how has that experience way back then changed you or helped you to be the individual you are today, from that Foxhole experience to where you are today? How has that had an impact on your life?
Well, I think for me it was a wake-up call to your own mortality. When you're 20-something, you're bulletproof, and that helped me realize that I wasn't. And if you've never had that realization, whether it's a medical diagnosis, or maybe you've come in contact with an auto accident that you're involved in, anything of that nature, for me it was a very sobering reminder, and that's what drove me to go where I knew I could go. It drove me home, so to speak.
Yeah.
How do you make that realization and still manage to go forward? And over the years, and you mentioned this before, you're not done. It's not a one-day effort, because if it is, I would think that would probably be your last day on earth. Then you've made it there. But for everybody, it's a gradual thing, and you'll see. I don't want to say an evolution, but a maturity in your faith. And I'm not there yet. I don't know that I'll ever be there. But I don't fear death like I may have 30 years ago. Part of it is because I don't worry about where I'm going. But secondly, I have people, I have family, I have friends that I know are waiting on me. And while you hate to leave the ones behind here, you also know what's waiting for you there. And, it's it's, I'll never leave you or forsake you, and I hold on to that. I truly do. Just like, you mentioned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I mean, when they came out, they didn't even smell of smoke. And,
Amazing.
it's amazing how that is. But when you think about it, you got to take your mindset off of it, because you can't see things the way that God sees things. You just have to trust that He is actually going to be there, and He's going to do what He said He'll do.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's done. It's game over. You don't have to worry about it.
Love it, man. Jim, if folks out there want to get in touch with you, to connect with you as a fellow believer, well, before that, would you be willing to leave us with your testimony of Jesus Christ?
Pardon me?
Would you be willing to just
Say it
leave us
again.
your testimony, just like your feelings of Jesus Christ, before we wrap up?
Absolutely. I mean, I like I said, I grew up in the church. I can't remember a time when I did not know of Jesus. But I can actually say that I truly gave my heart to Him, even though I didn't truly live for Him, when I was 14. And I remember in church I was thinking, well, if you don't do this now, when are you going to? So if not now, when? And at that moment, I made the decision to do that. And I was fortunate enough that even though I hated it at the time, there were times on Wednesday night, I would rather be a Boy Scout or playing ball than in church. But as I look back over it, that is a legacy of faith that my parents and my grandparents gave me that is beyond value. I always told my granddad that I didn't have to play Powerball or Mega Millions because I'd already won the lottery. I was born into that family.
Yeah.
And by an extension, I was born into the opportunity and given my life to Christ, so I was now part of His family. And over the years, as I've grown, I've not walked always as I should, but I know where that sidewalk is. And I can make that, I've made it back to that. And as I grow older, I see things maybe with a little less sense of let's do this now better than maybe how can I do it better. And as I said earlier, I think people sometimes are very hard on yourselves. That's a difficulty I have because I try to do things and be a perfectionist about it. But I know that I'll never get there, but I know that I can keep trying and I can keep making better steps every single day. And, I just try to fill my heart and fill my ears and fill my life with things that are actually edifying, that build me up, whether it's listening to the Message channel on Sirius XM for, really good music or different things of that nature. I try to do that so that everybody I meet and everybody I come in contact with can truly say, I'm a better person for having spent 5 minutes with Him, or I feel better after I've talked to Him. And if I get the chance to share my faith, then I better do that because I don't know if that's the last chance I'll get or the last opportunity they may have. So that's my testimony. It's a work in progress. I'm not done yet.
Amen.
And hopefully I have a long way to go.
I love it. Jim, if folks out there want to get in touch with you or to connect with you, how did they go about doing so?
You can email me. My email address is james_Henderson@yahoo.com.
All right, Jim, we'll go ahead and put that in our show notes so folks can get access to you. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for sharing your testimony. And I know it definitely helped and inspired others out there today.
Thanks, Donald. It's a pleasure.
That was Jim Henderson, and I'm so thankful for you being here and for being a guest on our podcast, and for Jim being a guest on our podcast, and you being a listener of our podcast. I'm thankful for you being here. I would ask you to do one thing. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, and also share this with someone else. There are many of you out there who have experiences and your stories of Jesus Christ. It would be great if we could pass those messages on. We could pass those stories and help others around the world to come onto Christ and to draw closer to Him and get to know Him. I ask you, I plead with you today, share this podcast, share this episode with one of your friends, someone that you know that's a believer, somebody may have fallen away from Christ, somebody who needs a little bit of a buoying up. Let them know that we are here. I'm thankful for you. We're all changing. We all could do a better job. I testify to you that Jesus is the Christ. I know He lives, and I know that one day He'll return, and I want to be able to be with Him and for you to be there as well. Let's help others come and to know Him, and let's continue to change together. Thanks so much for watching.